8 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, April 8th. The deadline passed. Iran did not open the Strait of Hormuz. Iran did not accept the 45-day ceasefire. Iran did not blink. And 47 minutes after the clock ran out, the first B-2 Spirit lifted off from Diego Garcia. Within hours, every bridge across the Karun River in Khuzestan province was gone. Every power plant feeding Tehran's grid was burning. 93 million people went dark. And somewhere off the southern coast of Iran, 2,200 Marines aboard the USS Tripoli received the order that changes everything. Take Kharg Island. What happened in the hours after that deadline is not a military escalation. It is a structural fracture in the global economy that will reach your gas station, your grocery store, your electricity bill, and your retirement account within days, not weeks. And by the end of this analysis, you will understand exactly why the 8 p.m. deadline was never about diplomacy. It was always about the math. I am Professor Huang-Xu. This is the analysis you will not hear on cable news. If you are watching this for the first time, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because the next 72 hours will produce developments that reshape the global order, and you will want someone walking you through each one as it happens. Let me give you the roadmap. First, I am going to walk you through what the military operation actually looks like, and why Kharg Island is simultaneously the most valuable and the most dangerous objective the United States has attempted to seize since Incheon in 1950. Then I am going to show you the transmission chain, the specific mechanism through which a military operation 7,000 miles away reaches your household budget within 96 hours. And then I am going to give you the 3 scenarios for what happens next, with honest probability estimates, because this is where the structural picture becomes genuinely alarming. To understand what is happening right now, you need to understand what Kharg Island actually is. Because most coverage treats it as a dot on a map. It is not a dot. It is the fiscal spine of the Iranian state. Kharg Island is a coral outcrop in the northern Persian Gulf, roughly 5 miles long, 3 miles wide, sitting 25 kilometers off Iran's southern coast. Through its terminals and loading jetties, approximately 90% of Iran's crude oil exports flow. That translates to roughly 1.5 million barrels per day loaded onto very large crude carriers that can only dock there because Kharg sits in naturally deep water that most of Iran's shallow coastline cannot offer. Trump said it himself in the Financial Times. "My favorite thing is to take the oil. Seize Kharg and you control Iran's economic lifeline." No oil exports means no revenue. No revenue means the regime collapses. That is the theory. Here is the reality. Kharg Island sits 15 miles from the Iranian mainland. On a clear day, you can see it from the coast. Every piece of artillery, every rocket launcher, every anti-ship missile battery, every drone launch facility on the Iranian coastline can reach it. The island does not sit in the middle of the ocean. It sits in Iran's backyard. And Iran has spent 45 years preparing for exactly this scenario. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has constructed what military planners call an A2AD architecture, anti-access area denial, specifically designed around Kharg. Mobile coastal batteries carrying Noor and Qatar missiles with ranges up to 300 kilometers, hidden in mountainous terrain, launched from tunnels bored into rock, swarm capability built on cheap expendable fiber optic guided drones that fly in 30 feet above the water surface, guided by operators who are physically invisible to electronic warfare systems. You cannot jam an optical fiber. You can shoot the drone, but when 50 of them are incoming simultaneously, you run out of interceptors before they run out of drones. Beneath the surface, a fleet of Ghadir-class miniature submarines, shallow water vessels carrying torpedoes and anti-ship missiles in waters too tight for effective American anti-submarine warfare operations. And on land, precision ballistic missiles, the Khalij Fars and the Hormuz II, equipped with electro-optical terminal guidance that can identify a ship, lock onto it, and strike at hypersonic speed. Now here is the part that most people never hear explained. The Marines on the Tripoli can probably take Kharg. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is among the most capable amphibious forces ever assembled. F-35B stealth fighters operating from the flight deck, MV-22 Ospreys for rapid insertion, AH-1Z Vipers for close air support. The initial seizure is not the problem. The problem is the morning after. Once American forces are on Kharg, they are on a piece of land 1/3 the size of Manhattan, surrounded by hostile waters, within range of everything Iran possesses, dependent on supply lines that must transit waters Iran has already demonstrated it can threaten. Every resupply mission, every ammunition transport, every medical evacuation vessel must navigate through contested waters. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. It has been since February 28th. That means every supply convoy approaches from the Gulf of Oman through waters Iran controls. Iran does not need to retake Kharg. Iran just needs to siege it. Continuous missile and drone attacks, mining of approach routes faster than they can be cleared, harassment of every supply convoy, attrition of every aircraft attempting resupply missions. The garrison becomes a bleeding wound that weakens American military capacity globally while providing Iran exactly the imagery it needs. American soldiers dying daily on an island 15 miles from their coast. The historical parallels are not encouraging. Iwo Jima, 1945. The United States had absolute dominance in the air and at sea. The Navy bombarded the island for weeks before the assault. 20,000 Japanese defenders inflicted nearly 7,000 American dead in 5 weeks of fighting. And the Japanese had no precision missiles, no drones, no anti-ship ballistic missiles, no mainland 15 miles away providing continuous fire support. Iran has all of those capabilities, and they have been studying exactly how America fights for 45 years. But Kharg Island is not the story. Kharg Island is the trigger. The story is what happens to the global economy in the 96 hours after the deadline passed. Let me walk you through the transmission chain, because this is where it becomes your problem directly. And I want to be precise about the mechanism, because understanding it is the difference between being informed and being surprised. Before the war began on February 28th, Brent crude sat at approximately $71 per barrel. As of this week, it trades above $114. That is a 60% increase in 38 days. The moment Trump's deadline passed and the first strikes hit Iranian power infrastructure, oil futures moved again. The trajectory is now toward $140 to $150 per barrel. Goldman Sachs has modeled the scenario. Macquarie assigned a 40% probability that crude could reach $200 if the conflict extends into June. Now, most people hear $150 oil and think gas will be expensive. That is true, but it is the smallest piece of the picture. Let me show you the full chain. Step 1. Crude oil rises. Every refined fuel product rises with it. Gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, heating oil. American gas prices, already at $3.98 per gallon, begin moving toward $5, then $6, then potentially $7 if the strait remains closed and Kharg's loading terminals are damaged in the fighting. For a family driving 2 vehicles averaging 12,000 miles per year at 25 miles per gallon, $7 gasoline adds approximately $2,400 in annual fuel costs compared to pre-war prices. Step 2. Diesel drives everything. Every truck that delivers food to your grocery store, every tractor that plows a field, every freight train, every construction vehicle, every generator at every hospital. Diesel has already surged 45% to $5.45 per gallon. That cost does not stay at the pump. It enters every product that moves through a supply chain, which is everything. Step 3. Fertilizer collapses. This is the domino that nobody on television is explaining, and it is the one that matters most over the next 6 months. The Gulf region produces close to half the world's urea and roughly 30% of global ammonia output. Nitrogen fertilizers are manufactured from natural gas. When the gas stops flowing, the urea stops. When the urea stops, farming stops. Urea prices have already climbed 50% since the war began. The mid-April deadline for Northern Hemisphere planting means any disruption in March and April translates directly into reduced crop yields by September. Think about what that means. Reduced planting this spring means less grain harvested this autumn. Less grain means higher food prices hitting grocery stores in the third and fourth quarters of 2026. And those price increases land on a consumer already absorbing $5 to $7 gasoline and elevated electricity costs. The 1973 oil embargo produced a 12% spike in American food prices within 5 months. The current disruption is larger in absolute barrel terms and broader in commodity scope. Step 4. The Federal Reserve is trapped. Under normal circumstances, if the economy slows, the Fed cuts rates to stimulate growth. But you cannot cut rates while inflation is running hot from energy and food shocks. Cutting rates into inflation is throwing gasoline on fire, so the Fed holds rates. Mortgages stay expensive, auto loans stay expensive, business borrowing stays expensive. The economy slows under the weight of energy costs while the Fed watches, frozen, unable to act. Step 5. The electricity crisis. And this is the dimension that has received almost no coverage. Trump's strikes on Iranian power plants are not just a military operation against Iran. They are a signal to global energy markets about the severity and duration of this conflict. But the electricity problem is not limited to Iran. Gulf states that depend on natural gas for power generation face rolling constraints as LNG supplies through Hormuz remain disrupted. Pakistan has already moved government offices to a 4-day work week to save fuel. The Philippines declared a national energy emergency, the first country to do so. European natural gas prices, measured by the Dutch TTF benchmark, have surged 59% since the war began. If the disruption persists beyond 2 months, European industrial output faces a contraction that the OECD projects could reach 5 to 7%. Now, here is the number that should keep every financial planner awake tonight. The United States must refinance approximately $10 trillion of existing national debt this year. That debt was issued at 1 to 2% interest. The new debt will be issued at current market rates above 4%. The difference is roughly $200 billion in additional annual interest payments, added to a federal budget that already spends $1 trillion per year on debt service alone. And this is happening while the war costs approximately $891 million per day. The Congressional Budget Office projected annual deficits reaching 6.5% of GDP before the war began. Now, let me give you the 3 scenarios for how this resolves, because the structural picture demands honest assessment rather than false comfort. Scenario 1. Rapid resolution. The strikes on Iranian power infrastructure produce a political shock inside Iran that forces Tehran to accept a modified ceasefire within 7 to 14 days. Hormuz partially reopens under multinational escort. Oil prices settle between $90 and $100 per barrel. Kharg Island is either returned as a bargaining chip or held temporarily. The economic damage is severe but recoverable. I assess this at approximately 20% probability. The reason it is low is structural. Iran has absorbed 38 days of bombardment that destroyed 85% of its petrochemical capacity, killed its supreme leader, eliminated its IRGC intelligence chief, and degraded its air defenses by 80%. And it has not capitulated. A regime that has survived all of that does not surrender because the lights went out. It escalates. Prolonged attrition. This is the most probable outcome, and I assess it at approximately 55% probability. The United States holds Kharg Island, but at enormous cost. Iran wages a continuous drone and missile attrition campaign against the garrison. The strait remains functionally closed for months. Oil prices stabilize between $120 and $150 per barrel. The global economy enters stagflation. The Federal Reserve cannot cut rates. American consumer prices for food and energy climb 15 to 25% above pre-war levels. European industrial output contracts. Gulf states accelerate their pivot toward Chinese defense partnerships. The petrodollar system sustains structural damage that takes years to assess, but cannot be reversed. This is the scenario that Ray Dalio at Bridgewater compared to Britain's 1956 Suez Crisis, the moment an overstretched empire discovers that military success does not translate into strategic victory, when the financial architecture underneath it is fracturing. Catastrophic escalation. Iran, facing the destruction of its civilian infrastructure, sprints to nuclear breakout. The IAEA has already confirmed enrichment at 89.2%. Weapons grade is 90%. The breakout timeline is measured in days. If Iran conducts a nuclear test, the entire strategic calculus transforms overnight. Regional proliferation begins immediately. Saudi Arabia has stated publicly that it will match Iranian nuclear capability. The oil market prices in permanent instability. Crude exceeds $200 per barrel. Global recession becomes the baseline forecast. I assess this at approximately 25% probability, higher than most analysts are willing to state publicly, because the structural conditions that prevent it, namely American ability to physically destroy Fordo's underground centrifuges, have already been tested and found insufficient. The facility sits under 80 meters of mountain rock. The largest conventional bombs may not reach it. Now, here is what I want to leave you with. Because the purpose of this analysis is not fear. It is structural literacy. Watch 3 things independently over the next 72 hours. These 3 signals will tell you where this conflict is heading before any headline does. First, watch Brent crude futures. If Brent breaks $130 per barrel and holds for more than 48 hours, the market is pricing in a prolonged closure of Hormuz with no diplomatic resolution in sight. That number is the threshold where the political math in Washington changes overnight. Second, watch Iranian drone and missile launch rates against Kharg Island and Gulf state infrastructure. If Iran sustains more than 50 launches per day against the Kharg garrison and Gulf energy facilities simultaneously, the interceptor depletion math becomes binding within weeks. Every Patriot interceptor costs $4 million. Every Iranian Shahed drone costs $50,000. That is an 80-to-1 cost ratio in Iran's favor on every single engagement. Third, watch the IAEA's next statement on enrichment levels at Fordo. If Iran crosses 90%, every scenario I have described changes in ways that no financial model and no military plan has fully accounted for. The 30-year effort to prevent a nuclear Iran either succeeds in the next few days or it fails permanently. The 8 p.m. deadline has passed. The bridges are burning. The power plants are dark. 93 million people are sitting in darkness, and 2,200 Marines are approaching an island that Iran has spent 45 years preparing to defend. America built a war machine designed to win in hours. Iran built a survival strategy designed to endure for months. And in a war of attrition measured in billions of dollars per week and $50,000 drones against $4 million interceptors, the math always favors the side that only needs to endure. The question is no longer whether this war will cost you. It already is. Your gas tank, your grocery bill, your mortgage rate, your retirement account. Every one of them is now a direct transmission variable of a conflict being decided on a coral island 15 miles off the coast of Iran. The question now is how long it lasts, how deep it cuts, and whether the people making the decisions understand the structure of what they have walked into. The clock started at 8 p.m. Tuesday. It is running, and it is not running in America's favor. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what just happened and what it means for their life. Drop your assessment in the comments. Does America hold Kharg for a month, or does Iran make it too expensive within a week? Subscribe and hit the bell, because the Iranian response to tonight's strikes has not arrived yet. When it does, you will want analysis that explains what you are actually seeing. I am Professor Huang-Xu. Stay informed, stay realistic. I will see you in the next one.